Tonight on Reporting Scotland. Minimum pricing for alcohol could be set at 50 pence a unit. Health campaigners say it's a landmark moment, but will it reduce the number of people who drink to excess?
There's a dealer on every corner and everybody sells it. You'll always find a way.
Also on the programme. Scottish Labour's interim leader, Alec Rowley, is suspended from the Holyrood Party, whilst allegations he sent abusive texts to an ex-girlfriend are investigated. A raid on a puppy farm in Aberdeenshire leads to the rescue of nearly 90 dogs. Prime Minister hints VAT paid by the rescue services in Scotland may be scrapped. It could be announced in next week's Westminster budget. And we're in Dubai for the finale of the European Golf Tour, with 4 Scots competing for the £6 million prize. Good evening. Scotland is set to become the first country in the world to introduce minimum unit pricing for alcohol. It follows the Supreme Court's decision to dismiss a legal challenge led by the Scotch Whisky Association, ending a 5-year court battle. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
Coming soon to a supermarket or off sales near you, higher prices for the cheapest, strongest booze. And not everybody's sold on that idea.
They're penalising people who drink sensibly anyway. You might have people that drink at home because can't really afford to go out.
The people who want to buy drink, it won't really matter to them because they'll continue to buy drink even if it is more expensive.
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
Why?
There's too many people stoking about drunk, yeah.
The whisky industry fought hard against minimum pricing, arguing that it breaches EU trade law. But judges at the UK Supreme Court unanimously rejected that case.
The 2012 Act does not breach EU law. Minimum pricing is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim.
The aim is to reduce excessive drinking and alcohol-related deaths, and ministers believe setting a basic price per unit of alcohol will help achieve that.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted at this unanimous ruling by the UK Supreme Court. It's a landmark moment for public health in Scotland, and it will help to change our relationship with alcohol, and it will save lives, it will reduce harm, and we look forward to getting on and implementing it as soon as possible.
So what difference would a minimum price of 50 pence per unit of alcohol actually make? Well, if you take this big bottle of cider, instead of paying £2, you'd be charged a £5. And it would no longer be possible to sell a bottle of vodka like this for a tenner. Instead, you'd have to pay more than £14. But for some other drinks more expensively priced, like this £8 bottle of Prosecco, well, it would be unaffected. It's 8 years since Nicola Sturgeon first raised an alcohol-free toast to minimum pricing when she was Health Secretary.
Lovely.
It's 5 years since she persuaded Parliament to back the measure at the second time of asking.
Have the guts and gumption to do the right thing.
But the law has not yet taken effect because of the drink industry's legal action, which has now come to an end.
We wouldn't have taken this case if it hadn't been as important as it was to us. I think it was in the public interest to test the law. As I say, we support the Supreme Court's ruling and will now work with the Scottish Government on the implementation of minimum unit pricing.
The industry's worried other countries will retaliate by hitting whisky with tax hikes. But after years of controversy and delay, minimum pricing can now happen. Glenn Campbell, Reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, the new unit price is a bid to curb harmful drinking of cheap, super-strong alcohol. Excessive drinking in Scotland results in hundreds of hospital admissions. And in 2016, there were more than 1,200 alcohol-related deaths. Our health correspondent, Shelley Joffrey, reports from an alcohol rehabilitation unit in Wishaw.
This is Matthew's third attempt at rehab. Drinking has taken him to some pretty dark places over the years.
I've sat with a shotgun in my mouth. Once the addiction kicked in properly, There was no love for anybody else. There was only love for the alcohol.
For him, the cost of booze has never been an obstacle.
There's a dealer on every corner and everybody sells it. You'll always find a way.
This is a private clinic. Clients here can afford higher prices.
The alcohol they drink, it wouldn't really increase the price of the alcohol they drink by much. But I think for more working class people, it'll make a big difference.
By the time heavy drinkers reach rehab, the cost of drink is almost irrelevant. But by raising the minimum price of alcohol, all the research suggests that ultimately it will save lives.
Alcohol misuse killed 1,265 people in Scotland last year. In the first year of minimum pricing, it's estimated 58 deaths will be averted. By year 20, it's estimated there will be 121 fewer deaths a year due to alcohol.
It's absolutely about how much alcohol is in a product, so it's really targeting those high strength, really cheap products, because those are the things that are really driving the harm, the illness, the suffering that we're seeing in Scotland.
So less need for rehab in the future, fewer alcohol-related cancers, and perhaps some unexpected benefits.
I remember back to the introduction of the smoking ban in public places, what we saw was a far bigger impact on health than we anticipated. I'm hopeful that we see that now. We know it will reduce the number of deaths related to alcohol, and Scotland has one of the highest death rates from alcohol in Western Europe at the moment.
All of this will, of course, also save the NHS money.
Well, Shelley joins me now. Shelley, when might this be implemented?
Well, of course, this has been discussed for 5 years now. A lot of the groundwork has already been done by the government, but they're going to have to revisit some of that. So the proposals are going to go out for consultation. They'll have to do a new business impact assessment. And then when that's done, it can become law. The Scottish Government says it wants to move forward as quickly as possible, though, with these plans, so we could see prices rise as early as next year.
Shelley, thank you very much. Scottish Labour's interim leader, Alex Rowley, has tonight been suspended from the party group at Holyrood. He had earlier stepped aside from the leadership after facing claims that he sent abusive text messages to a former girlfriend. Mr Rowley denies the allegations and says he'll fight to clear his name. Pressure for suspension came from the two candidates to be leader. This from our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Alex Rowley is a relatively new MSP, first elected at a by-election in 2014. But he's a big name in Labour politics. Former council leader, general secretary and aide to Gordon Brown.
Question number 2, Alex Rowley.
As Scottish Labour's deputy leader, he stepped up when Kezia Dugdale stepped down from the top job in August. Now he faces claims from a former girlfriend that he sent her abusive text messages. In a statement, he said he totally refuted the allegations and would take all steps necessary to clear his name. He added that the allegations must be properly and thoroughly investigated in line with the party's procedures.
For our goal, our purpose must be a fairer, more just Scotland.
Pending that investigation, he has relinquished his leadership roles. Ms Dugdale wants him suspended from the party, as do the contenders to replace her.
I think we do need to have a suspension, though I believe, in his membership while we have a robust and fair and thorough investigation process.
Richard Leonard, the other candidate, wasn't available for interview but also urged suspension and thorough investigation. We approached other Labour MSPs for comment.
Clearly there should be a full investigation and that's what's happening.
I think there's a due process will take place and that's how it should be.
Alex Rowley's short time as interim leader has involved turmoil. At the end of September, he landed in a row after being taped voicing firm support for Richard Leonard to become leader.
I'm clearly disappointed and gutted that what I thought was a private conversation was tape recorded.
For the past 2 weeks, Mr Rowley has been absent from Parliament with a chest infection. Jackie Bailey stood in for him in questioning the First Minister.
Will the First Minister join with me in commending the bravery and courage of all those who have come forward to speak out about sexual harassment?
There was no sign of Mr Rowley in his Lochgelly office today. People in the town offered their views.
To step aside until it's proved innocent, guilty, whatever, you know, I think probably is the best thing to do.
I'm shocked, you've just shocked me. Honestly, he's really, really a gentleman.
Alex Rowley is adamant he will be cleared. Labour's new leader will be named on Saturday.
Well, Brian is at Holyrood for us this evening. Brian, so who is leading Scottish Labour now?
I guess it's Jackie Baillie. She's been asked to stand in, so I guess that makes her the interim leader. It's a pretty poisonous challenge for her, but it's a relatively short one because, of course, the new leader will be named on Saturday. It's a difficult period for the Labour Party generally. Just as an example of that, perhaps I could add that I asked for a copy of the resignation letter that Mr Rowley sent when he stood down voluntarily from his leadership posts pending the investigation. I was told it formed part of the investigation.
Brian Taylor, thank you. Unemployment in Scotland has risen very slightly. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics show the number of people out of work went up by 2,000 between July and September. This means unemployment in Scotland stands at 4%, which is below the UK average of 4.3%. Nearly 90 dogs and puppies have been rescued from what's been described as Scotland's largest puppy farm. Animal welfare officers raided a farm near Fyvie in Aberdeenshire. The Scottish SPCA think the puppies are being bred without a licence and on a large scale before being passed on to a dealer and sold on the internet. Rebecca Curran reports.
They swooped in and immediately found what they came for. Puppies, packed together in cages. The smell overwhelming. The conditions, these officers say, concerning. This Scottish SPCA officer, who can't be identified, led the investigation.
I wouldn't say that there's many other individuals in Scotland who have this number of dogs. I mean, you can see with the numbers of puppies that we've got here, these are certainly not pets. So they're clearly being used, for illegal breeding. As far as I know, there's no licences here in terms of breeding or pet shop licence. So yeah, these dogs will be being sold illegally onto members of the public.
The practice is described as puppy farming because of the sheer scale of the operation, a scale not yet seen, officers claim, anywhere else in Scotland.
Not terribly inflamed, just slightly waxy.
This is a painstaking operation that will take hours. Each puppy has to be examined by the vet. Those details are then documented. Each one is tagged before they can be taken away. In total, 87 dogs and puppies were seized under the Animal Welfare Act. A number of other animals were also taken into care. It's estimated the puppies could have been sold for between £400 and £900 each.
The welfare of these dogs has been compromised. All these environmental problems that we're picking up are going to cause unnecessary risk of disease and poor health, which is going to cause pain and suffering and death to some of these dogs.
The Scottish SPCA claims to have found the remains of dogs in a burnt-out vehicle at the site. Most of the images are too distressing to be shown.
They can't take things for no reason.
This man arrived during the raid. He said there was nothing wrong with the dogs.
If they're not ill, they can't lift them. And they're lifting dogs for no reason whatsoever.
The Scottish SPCA is still working to establish who owns the animals. A report will be sent to the Procurator Fiscal. It's hoped after treatment, most can be rehomed. Rebecca Curran, reporting Scotland, Aberdeenshire.
It's 18 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. Scotland is set to become the first country in the world to introduce minimum unit pricing for alcohol after a 5-year legal battle. And still to come, the 4 Scottish golfers who've made it to the European Tour Championship in Dubai. The fight against climate change will require serious behavioural change, according to the First Minister. Nicola Sturgeon has been addressing climate talks in Bonn, where world leaders are trying to further the global agreement signed in Paris last year. Our environment correspondent Kevin Keane reports.
Reclaim power! Reclaim power!
On the streets of Bonn, voices have been ringing out.
Climate justice!
These protesters, including some from Scotland, keen to be heard.
I mean, things like this are hugely important. People are really frustrated with the slow pace of the talks inside. Many of these people standing here are coming from communities and places that are feeling the impacts of climate change now, and they really are putting the pressure on the politicians inside to act with urgency, to up the pace, to cut their emissions.
Inside, world leaders have been arriving for the high-level talks, including the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the French President Emmanuel Macron. For the first time, Scotland's First Minister was invited to address the full conference, not on behalf of her own government, but devolved administrations around the world. Earlier, she told me the job of tackling climate change is getting tougher.
We're getting into territory that is going to be much more challenging for people, and it will involve behaviour change, whether that's in the way we heat our homes or in how we get from A to B on the transport network. And these are much more difficult issues, but that's why I think we've got to continue to remind ourselves that we're doing this not just for ourselves, but we're doing this to help some of the most vulnerable parts of the world.
A lot is at stake at this event, and 20,000 people from across the globe have travelled to be here in Bonn trying to influence its outcome, from environmental groups and charities to countries large and small. That's a lot of voices, all jockeying to be heard.
Scotland's targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions are ambitious, but some say not enough, and there are calls for a carbon-neutral economy by 2050.
Should that target be 100%, which is what environmental groups are saying?
We haven't reached a final view on that. I've just been talking to Friends of the Earth about that very point.
Because if you're in a position where you're leading the world, as you're on that stage today, is it not the most the strongest message is to say we want a zero carbon economy?
I mean, this is one of the very issues we're considering and will come to a conclusion on in the relatively near future.
The focus on this city will remain for several more days, but countries have another year until the next conference in Poland to explain how they'll contribute to this global climate effort.
Well, you heard there that pressure is mounting on Nicola Sturgeon to confirm or to announce that Scotland will be carbon neutral by 2050. On the stage behind me in her speech today, she gave what I think is the heaviest hint yet that will be confirmed. She said that there would be an urgent decision on when Scotland would become zero carbon free, net carbon. That wasn't if, that was when. What would that mean if that were to be confirmed? Well, it would essentially mean that Scotland would emit equal amounts of greenhouse gases than the quantity that it soaks up in things like trees and plants and any kind of carbon capture and storage process. That would be world leading, but it would be at least 20 years away if indeed it was confirmed.
Kevin Keane, thank you very much. A Rangers administrator who was arrested during the police investigation into Craig White's takeover of the club is suing the Chief Constable of Police Scotland and the Lord Advocate for £9 million. David Whitehouse claims he was wrongly detained by police in 2011 and suffered damage to his reputation and earnings. His colleague Paul Clark is also suing the same authorities. Charges against the pair were dropped in June 2016. The Chief Constable and the Lord Advocate claim they acted correctly. The Prime Minister has hinted VAT paid by Scotland's National Police and Fire Services could be scrapped. She told MPs the Treasury would report soon, with speculation there could be an announcement in next week's budget. Local police and fire services were exempt from VAT, but this ended with the creation of single services in 2013. From Westminster, here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
Should Scotland's fire and police services have to pay VAT? Until 2013, local forces didn't. That changed when the Scottish Government created national forces, meaning they're the only ones in the UK who have to pay the tax. But that could be about to change. This time next week, the Chancellor will leave this door with his red box ready to deliver his budget. And he's been lobbied hard on this issue. The Scottish Government in Edinburgh, the SNP group here and Labour have all called publicly for this policy to be changed. Scottish Tory MPs have been making that argument too, directly to Philip Hammond behind closed doors. There are many at Westminster who now think next week's budget will contain a change of policy on this issue. As a senior Scottish Tory said today, nothing will be confirmed until the Chancellor is on his feet next Wednesday. But today, Theresa May was asked the Prime Minister's questions.
Well, the UK government now give Scotland's emergency services back our 140 million and scrap the VAT. This has been a long-standing SNP campaign. We will not give up.
She gave a hint a change could be coming.
Right, Honourable Gentleman, as the Chief Secretary has made clear that officials in HMT will look at this issue and they'll report on it in due course. I'm pleased to say that very constructive representations have been made by my Scottish colleagues on the Conservative benches on this particular issue.
We'll find out next week if that and other pressure leads to change. If it does, expect different parties to claim credit and further debate on whether the money already paid should be refunded. Nick Eardley reporting Scotland, Westminster.
The Edinburgh Trams inquiry has heard that the chief executive of the organisation charged to deliver them knew from the outset that the price of the contract would go up. The claim was made by Richard Walker, a former senior management of the consortium that built the line, which came in years late and millions over budget. Mr Walker claimed Willie Gallagher, the chief executive of the trams company TIE, said everybody knew the price would rise. But the inquiry has already heard that councillors thought it was a fixed price deal. The NSPCC says children suffering sexual abuse in Scotland are going without help because of a lack of specialist services. A report by the charity suggests access to the services remains patchy and fragmented, despite a greater spotlight on child sexual abuse over the past decade. The Scottish Government says it's working to identify where the system can be strengthened to ensure children receive the right help at the right time. Sport now, and the Scottish Football Association have made an official approach to Northern Ireland to speak to their manager Michael O'Neill about their vacant manager's job. As we revealed last night, the former Hibs midfielder is at the top of the SFA's list to replace Gordon Strachan, who left last month. It's understood a number of clubs are also keen, and Northern Ireland have offered him a new deal to stay. It's the golfing finale in the Dubai desert that brings the season to a lucrative close. And 4 Scottish golfers have made it to the prestigious European Tour Championship, where they'll be competing with over 50 others for a combined purse of over £6 million. From Dubai, here's Brian McLaughlin.
A few miles away from the city skyscrapers, an oasis of green. The Earth course at Jumeirah Golf Estates on the outskirts of Dubai. And this week, the best golfers in Europe have assembled. And the field includes 4 Scots. David Drysdale from Eyemouth asked his wife Vicky to caddy for him in a tournament earlier this year. And their on-course partnership has certainly clicked.
It's obviously something that I took on at the start of the year, which was, you know, a 1-week deal at the start. And obviously, you know, David said he's been trying to kick a couple of guys out, and then, you know, he didn't feel focused or whatever, so he asked me to do it full time. So yeah, I've enjoyed it, but it's been really, really hard work.
And hard work has earned Scott Jamieson his place in the lineup after finishing in 2nd spot last weekend in South Africa. And he says that has given him the confidence he can go one better this time.
You know, last week it showed me that you know, I can win. You know, it was obviously very close come the end. So yeah, after last week, I believe I can do it, but you've got to do a lot of things right to get yourself in that position.
For Richie Ramsey, this spells the end of the road after a tiresome run of golf.
I left home like 4 weeks ago, and I've been Shenzhen, Shanghai, Istanbul, Joburg, and then Dubai this week. So a lot of travel, and you're just trying to sort of keep your energy levels high.
And as darkness descended on the course, Mark Warren got a call-up, his late inclusion leaving him little time to prepare. When the final putt is sunk here on Sunday afternoon, it will mark the end of another long, hard year on the European Tour. And maybe this time around, a Scot could be at the top of the leaderboard. Brian McLaughlin reporting Scotland, Dubai.
I think I'd make do with the weather. Cosser, it's nothing like Dubai.
Jackie, no. But there will be sunshine in the forecast. That's the good news at least, but bitterly cold. Good evening to you all. Well, most of us ended the day today largely dry. And some spells of sunshine earlier today too across parts of Aberdeenshire. But for this evening and overnight, a weather system coming in from the Atlantic, bringing with it some wet and windy weather. Some gales across northern and western coastal areas, and some of that rain will be heavy at times. So a cloudy end to the day and start to the evening, and it will become quite windy with outbreaks of rain. Dry for a time further towards the east, but that rain across the northwest and those gales too for northern and western coastal areas, and that rain will spread south and eastwards as we head through the night. Now tonight will be less cold compared to last night, lows of around 4 to 6 Celsius in towns and cities, but for the northwest we're left with some clear spells and some blustery showers by morning and maybe a touch of frost. So a wet start to the day, a morning commute perhaps, but that rain will clear through fairly swiftly, and then we're left with some sunshine, but also some scattered blustery showers, most frequent across the north and west. So if you're heading out around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there could be a few showers across the southwest, but much drier further towards the east. For the central belt too, some sunshine here, but feeling cold in that wind. Still windy, especially across the north, with some gales continuing. And those showers could be heavy, maybe wintry up over the hills, and they come with the risk of hail and thunder. As we head into the evening, those showers still with us across the west. Drier, clearer spells further towards the east, turning quite chilly. A frost in store, and for rural areas, temperatures dipping below freezing. And for Friday, similar conditions. Frequent heavy showers, mainly across the north and west. The best of any drier, brighter weather further towards the east, and still feeling cold in that wind. As we look ahead, well, high pressure starts to build, and what we'll find is the winds will tend to ease as we start the weekend, and those showers will tend to ease too. So for Saturday, it's an improving day. Those showers still across the far north, but much more in the way of drier, brighter weather, but still feeling cold, and a cold night to come on Saturday night. That's your forecast.
Thank you very much, Koza. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. Robert Mugabe, the man who has ruled Zimbabwe since its independence in 1980, is under house arrest tonight. It follows an intervention by the country's army, which insists it is not a coup. And Scotland is set to become the first country in the world to introduce minimum unit pricing for alcohol after a 5-year legal battle. The Supreme Court ruled against the challenge led by the Scotch Whisky Association. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the headlines at 8 and the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from all the team, good evening.